all the speakers. Katharina will moderate. So you have two ways as an audience to interact. So we have again our Q&A, and I will make sure that these questions also go in. But as you see, there's also a chair empty. So this is called a fishbowl discussion. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term, but this basically means whoever wants at the audience can also join the discussion. You can bring in a question, you can bring in your perspective, and I think the speakers will pick that up. So really, don't be shy. I think the first one is always the most excited, but we will celebrate the first one the most. So use the QR code or use the chance, and the QR code is in the corner. And I give it to Katharina, and I will leave the mic here. So maybe.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So, Diego, after your presentation, I was close to crying too, because it all started with a small idea 4 or 5 years ago, and now it's getting that big. I agree 99.9% with everything you say. There is a tiny thing that I would like to discuss with you all. And this was the third question that you thought we should ask is, can we trust the source? And I think this question can be dangerous because it can also be misused to discredit a source, which happens in politics and policy making, saying, yeah, this comes from the Green Party, this cannot be right. Or this comes from the pharmaceutical industry, this cannot be correct. So I heard a TED talk, and the key message was, it's not about trust, it's about trustworthiness. So I would like to ask you, do we need clear criteria for trustworthiness of sources, for trustworthiness of people, organizations, data, but also trustworthiness of AI, and how can we get to a definition of those criteria, and how can we teach them? It's not only for you, it's for the whole group.
Should I start?
I think that's a really interesting point about actually not just trusting a source, but being able to actually know what that source, I think it's back to your evidence point, what go beyond, because sources can get it wrong, get it wrong, and we see that happen, especially the amount of co-opting of busy people with, well-funded agendas. But I would question, I'd question a little bit the concept of the word trustworthiness. Trust is such a complex philosophical area. And in 2020, I was absolutely there saying, we don't need trusted AI, we need trustworthy AI. And at the time, that felt like a really big leap. Like, look, you can't just tell us to trust it, you need to demonstrate that. But actually, I now feel like, now that trustworthiness has become a buzzword, I'm now feeling like, can we ever really have a kind of a personal relation? It's such a personal relationship, and trust means so many different things. And I'm kind of really liking the word confidence more. It's like, what do we need to have confidence in, whether it's a text, a source, an AI system? And that trust is kind of something that can, it can muddy the water a little bit. So I'm sorry, that wasn't a solution. That was just a kind of musing on what does it take to have confidence in something. And absolutely, right now, a lot of our work is on talking to young people about deepfakes, misinformation, disinformation, audio-visual stuff, and they are growing up in a world where they literally cannot believe their own eyes. Like, we don't know what that does to us as humans, like growing up not actually having concept of reality in the way that we all did. And so I think it's a more important question than ever, sorry not to have the solution.
You go ahead. Oh, you go ahead. Okay, I'm against using a new term for something just because it's overhyped. I think the communities who know what these terms means have to stand up now and fight, basically. This is my idea. And I'm 100% trust you have to earn, point. And you earn it when you demonstrate, you do it, what you do in a trustworthy way. And this could be providing data, developing AI systems, looking at graphics. So let's take it. So if you want to do it in a trustworthy way, you need to follow principles. So you need to have core values, like I call them trustworthiness dimension, like things has to be reproducible, it has to be explainable, transparent, it has to be ethically used. And if you have like a catalog of such trustworthiness characteristics, you have to educate the people what it means, and then they maybe can have, it's not about whether you trust or not. For me, the question is, this is a relationship with once again I had on the slide. Is it against your gut feeling? I think this we have to activate our human brain. If you see something, it's against our gut feeling. So it's not what I used to see, and at that moment, some activation has to go on in the brain. If you want. Question?
Sorry.
Yeah, again, what's connected to my presentation, I don't think it's a problem of how we name it. It's a matter of who agrees upon. I think we really need like institutions, countries, states who agree upon like guiding principles, frameworks. You named like lots of examples, like prominent ones when it comes to political disinformation, deep fakes, but also in the field of medicine. Yeah, when we see what's going on at the moment, like with products regarding generative AI from the US, which are coming onto the market in the European Union next year, probably, we definitely need some sort of trustworthiness. Yeah, really, like in obviously, like when it comes to this, people like or institutions like the World Health Organization mistrusts the medical device regulation, obviously, because they are having their own framework or guiding principles now regarding the usage of LLMs in the field of medicine and health. So I think it's deeply needed. But again, yeah, who are the players who are working on this and agreeing upon this? And we need an overarching approach and not like everyone is doing his own thing.
I can't add to that except to say that it's contextual too, as far as I'm concerned. It's where we're talking about it and who's talking about it and who we're talking to. So I'm going to pass that on.
Shall I introduce myself first?
Yes, that would be great.
My name is Elfke Schout. I'm the founder of AI Bridge and also the program director for MIS AI leadership at the HWZ in Zurich. And I love that this is a topic at the Applied Machine Learning Days. I agree with everything that all of you said. There's two challenges that I see on this topic, basically bringing it out in the market. And I'm mainly focused on organizations, but is two. One is, well, when we speak about data literacy, there's no AI in that. How can we make that sexy? And number two, maybe you've come across those ideas, right? In business, we often talk about, well, is it a vitamin pill or is it a painkiller? And the way that we present data literacy right now, it's a lot about it's being a vitamin pill. It's a nice to have. How can we make it a must have? How can we make clear to those that are driving that topic forward that it's a must, that it's a need? Have you come across ideas and how to make data literacy sexy for everyone?
Excellent question. How can we make data literacy great again? Has it ever been great?
It always was great. No?
I agree.
I fully agree with your 2 points. I take back the second one. This is the wish I have. I was asked before about this charter, that maybe now everyone sees there is like a common thing at the top, and maybe based on this, hopefully there will be some agreement how to go forward. Because the people who know exactly what's meant, they know that we have competence framework. I didn't speak about things are on the table. No, I think we have a lot of frameworks how to teach it. We had a wonderful experience also from you. You taught this not only since 2 years, so there's a lot on the table. But currently what's lacking is a little bit this common. We want to have it together based on a common understanding. And I hope that with this charter, at least for data lists, we get this common understanding in Switzerland. This is the wish I have. And the first one is really how to make it sexy. It's not easy. I can tell you, I'm now writing, this is what I wrote last Saturday, my column number 37. And I'm only speaking about data. And it's not always easy to find a nice story. So it's about storytelling. And the people who know what's included, how to do it, they're not trained on writing stories. I'm not a journalist. So once again, I need their help. So I had a lot of discussion with journalists to help me to do this storytelling. And think, with storytelling, you can reach the public, but you have to create the communication channel. And this is the problem I face. It's for this newspaper, I don't know, 60,000 readers. So I don't have the same audience as I would put it on TikTok or everything, because I'm not expert on this. So it's about spreading the word through the right communication. So it's about, I think, it's a cool name, AI Bridge, no? Yeah. Building a bridge.
Well, you know, in Canada, I think that we're not as far along even in thinking about it. So, I don't think I can help you, but I can say that, you know, I think a good place for us to start is in our curriculum and with our youngest citizens, because I think if we start early enough, by the time they get through school, they will have an understanding of whatever we call it, the literacy piece, is the understanding of what we're encountering all the time, understanding, you know, that someone's image and someone's voice may not necessarily be them that's speaking, and I know that's an extreme, but we want to make sure that people know what can be coming to them digitally. So we have the same concern, I think.
I guess I'd ask, who are we trying to make it sexy for? Because I think I absolutely agree that using terms that we fought really hard for, such as, you know, trustworthiness, can be really important from a policy, from an industry level, because otherwise, you know, we just lose direction. I completely take that on board. I come from a social justice perspective, and I think quite often some of the terms don't sit so comfortably. And in a way, the concept of making it sexy for people is something that would probably even be rejected within itself. And so it's kind of, you've got two audiences, really. You've got people that can make this stuff happen, and people for whom we're trying to speak. And I think it's really important to always think about the people for whom we are trying to speak, because quite often, you know, we're in a room like this full of very educated people having discussions about what's best for, you know, other people. And so I guess my answer to, you know, how do we make it sexy for people to want to learn is like, maybe that's, maybe it's going where they are rather than assuming that we have to. The language is such a challenge, because we talked about, you know, said it's having a common language is important, but I can say that not just across different territories, but also different groups of people, words have such different meanings. So we've talked in the IEEE group a lot about, you know, what does readiness mean? What does, you know, literacy mean? And I get pushback a lot on the term AI literacy because it's seen as didactic. This is from communities, from people I'm trying to get to learn. It's seen as boring. And someone suggested the term fluency, for example, is much better. It's not about you have to go to school and learn something. It's about being fluent with, the AI, the data around us. Readiness has been, I've had pushback that readiness is assuming you have to be ready. It's like get on the train rather than like, what kind of train do I want to be on, And I think I'd say the same potentially about, not leaving people behind. I deal with people that are like, what if I want to be left behind? What if that's not where I want to go? How can I say where we get to go? So I think the way that I engage people sometimes is actually talking to them about not just the fact that they have a right to be involved in these conversations, and there are barriers to that, but to some extent they have a responsibility because their voices need to be heard and they need to be able to use them in a way that aligns with their own interests. Because quite often people will, point to big, I'm sorry, I'm talking so long, people will point to big tech and kind of go, oh, they should do it better, that's, this is not what... But it's like, they're there for shareholder value. It's up to us to think about how we use our voices to actually make it shareholder value to get the kind of technology that we want. So I guess I also talk to people about their responsibility. Sorry, that was way too long. Yeah.
Thanks all for your replies. I mean, maybe to make this a little bit clearer of what I meant, or maybe I'm looking for, maybe it's not there, and maybe we should put our heads together to find that out. But when I speak to C-level of organizations, I tell them you should do a course on data literacy or data-driven decision making, and the typical question that comes back is why, and why would I have all my people spend the time on that? Why do I need it, right? When we had the pandemic, it was clear we need organizations to build vaccines now, to create that. That was a clear need. And I think it's about finding that an example like that to make this need clear and communicating in a way that those people that need to put the money on the table and put the time of the people on the table come to that. So, but from what I hear from the response, we haven't found it yet. And I think, what you said is actually getting people on board, journalists, of thinking how can we create that message and bring that across will be important.
Maybe just add a thing here. It's starting getting found in certain domains of application. For example, like the health in Switzerland, and do all of the things we did at the Parliament, the pressures. There are new initiatives which have to demonstrate that data literacy of costs of consumers now with respect to the electronic patient file, etc., they are somehow trained. But once again, this is written in the text, whether they do it or not, but at least it's get mentioned on some places now, also at the political level. So this is maybe a journey which takes some time. And once it will be done, then I think the ones at the C-level have two points. They think now this is the future, they invest now, top down, so they have first to change their mindset, not their employees. And one day the government maybe will be also at the point, and if they didn't do it, they get criticized. So I think it's a little bit, for me, it's a question of leadership which is missing.
So I think it's really hard on the level of formal stage education. So we are talking to lots of schools as well, and then we always, or quite often, get the feedback, oh, our pupils, our students, they have problems with reading at the moment and maths and stuff like that. So it's pretty hard and kind of demotivating on one side, but on the other side, for example, we see that more and more companies come to us and see that their young workers, they really need modules or courses about data-driven decision-making. So, and this is basically content, these are use cases we can use when we are going into talks with schools and universities again, and say it's an added value if you have this content integrated in your curricula, because it raises the chance that your students are getting jobs at good companies. So I think we have to create this form of narration or narratives and bring it like really like on the educational level or even on the level of politics and go in constant discussions. I think there's probably no other way around than just keep it up in some sort of way. Yeah? And we try to make, as I said in the beginning, in my presentation, we try to make it all sexy, like whether it's on TikTok or YouTube, but it has a limit, yeah. So it really needs to be adapted in schools and universities, or higher education institutions, which is kind of a battle we have to fight. Yeah.
So we have one question from the audience. If you want, just bring your chair.
I can just talk loud if that's okay. How would you assess the current level of data literacy? One of the discussions we had in our little pause session was there seems to be a real gap where there are people who have kind of followed the trend, and then there are people who just have not followed the trend, for whom, you mentioned reading, but if you think about Excel or managing a Word document, they can't do that. And then we're trying to add something on top of that. So from your varied experiences, where would you see the level or levels of data literacy? Because I think that's important in understanding where do you even start. The piece that we did at the EPFL Extension School also recognizes that when we look at a certain generation, like the smartphone generation, many of them are consumers, but they don't have the underlying understanding of how that is actually working, and there's a professional disconnect between people thinking, oh, that young generation, they get it, and in fact they don't get it, they just look at their screens a lot. How would you think that also fits into this understanding of the different levels of where we might be?
I could speak to that a little bit because I follow the PISA results on youth and their understandings of technology for learning, and PISA continues to report that youth don't necessarily understand how to use the technology that's intended to help them learn. I think it's a misunderstanding that young people, when they are on their phones all the time, will actually know how to learn through technology. And sometimes, if we don't start early enough, they'll come into school and they'll know how to use the technology to connect with each other and to have fun and even compete, but not to learn. So I think we have to start early, that's my opinion.
So we have one more chair here.
Maybe I'm a bit more direct with my response. So how can you measure something if you have no agreement on what it is? We can speak in ours, we have the same issue now with word innovation. So everyone thinks we are innovative, but as long as you don't have a common understanding what you mean by data literacy, you don't have a baseline on which you can start measuring things. How good is this and this? And I think, and this is for me, this is the key element. So it's not about, we cannot measure it. It has to be clear to everyone. We have something now which will not go away. This generative AI stuff will not go away. So they will become like books we have to read. We will confront them with data, everyone. This is, I don't know who doesn't get this point at any decision level. So then for me the question is no, then we have to do something. We have to upskill, reskill my organization. And I think a government has to do the same job for the citizens. So, and now we are back with the competences saying, once we have this, yes, let's go that way. We don't know how long it will take. Maybe it's for the next generation. Okay, at some point we need a good path forward, like you mentioned with the project. You start with ideation and you go on like this. And at some point you come to the point, because it's long-term learning, where you decide, okay, now we have to put in place quality assurance, blah, blah, blah. And as long as I hate these things also, these statistics you get now also on AI, how many, the European Union has now shown statistics, how many AI projects, or AI literacy. This is completely nonsense.
Yeah, I totally agree. So there was one, measurement of data and information competence in 2022 by the initiative D21 in Germany. And they published it. They used 4 questions from the DIGCOM framework. And one of the questions was, are you able to find information on the internet? 90-something% of the people with higher education agreed. And another question of the 4 was, can you identify fake news? 70-something% agreed of those with higher education, but that's what they themselves believe. And that's how we measure, at least on the European level, data and information competence. So this is the DICCOMP that you also mentioned. So clearly, we have a lack of knowledge here. So we don't know because we don't know what to measure and how to measure. There is definitely research to do, especially for AI literacy too. I would like to add something to your question before also about how can we teach AI literacy, how can we make it great again. One critical comment first, I think it's not only a vitamin pill or painkiller, it can also be a dangerous drug with side effects in policy making, because if we imagine everyone was data literate, including policymakers, then it wouldn't be possible anymore to pick studies and data that support your agenda or your narrative and name it evidence-based policymaking. So the old saying, don't trust a statistic that you haven't forged yourself, turns don't trust any statistics or any study that doesn't fit your narrative. And this wouldn't work anymore if everyone was data literate. So that's one thing. But on the other hand, I don't make the same experience when it comes to organizations or to the industry. I mean, as a consultant, I see a lot of success stories where people see if they increase their data literacy in the organization, they can gain something significantly. And it has a lot to do with, it often has a lot to do with understanding KPIs better. What do they mean? How can I explain them? How can they help me control and govern my organization? So what does it really mean? What is a good way of communicating data and information? And second thing is, which data sources can I trust or not? If I may, I can describe one example, if that's okay for you. So we have one situation of a customer, and they rent out reusable plastic containers for food. So they send them out to growers, and then they get to the retailers, get back, get washed, and then they are sent out again. And they decided to track these containers with sensors and use AI and a huge data infrastructure to collect the data and build dashboards for 2 reasons. One is automated declaration, so that they know how many they sent out and how many they came back, and they can track it. And the other reason was the auditors, because they need to know how long those containers are out there in the field and how many of them get lost, which has direct influence on their yearly, on the company statement. And then they found that based on the data they collected, the loss rate was several times higher than they had thought. And this is a dramatic situation for the CFO, because it would mean special depreciations in millions. Or if they trust the data, or if they don't trust the data, it means that they have invested a huge amount of money for building up that infrastructure, collecting the data, and so on. And the reason why there was this huge gap between what they thought, what their experience was regarding the loss rate, and what they found in the data was that the data was not representative. It was hugely biased. So they needed techniques, good old statistical techniques, for debiasing data, identifying data bias from survey statistics to clean the data, and in the end, the result matched what they thought and what their experience was. So this had a huge monetary financial value for the company to be more data literacy and understand that they have to invest in that knowledge and in that statistical skills. And it was only a fraction of the money that they already spent into building up this whole data infrastructure. So this also gives us an idea of how little valued the competence is compared to the technical environment. And I think this is something we should discuss more. That without the competence, without understanding what you're doing and to which degree you can trust the data and how you can make the data more trustworthy, it's worth nothing because it gives you wrong information. And I don't know how many organizations or companies suffer from similar problems. So they have dashboards that show systematically wrong values, give them systematically wrong information, but nobody knows. And that's something, I think this is at least works for the industry to come up with examples like that. But I don't know what works for policy making, what works for education. So how can we find similar examples that demonstrate the negative side effects of not being data literate or not being AI literate? Any ideas? Maybe from the audience? We still have an empty chair.
Maybe before trying to come to the answer, I think there's a saying says no pain, no change. And I think we had Corona, everybody was, and then everything was invested in technology, on making legal basis, and one completely forgot, once you have then the data connected, this is still garbage, sorry. So it's the quality is not there, it's not fit for purpose, so, and dashboards were built on, and I think this story will go on as long. For I see two things. So if a pressure comes from outside to the decision makers, and this could be from the citizens. I'm thinking about a data literate society. I don't want all policymakers to have it, but if they get the pressure from the society and the demographic society that they should deal with it, I hope that they may then next time have a good story about what's important of data and things like this. And there are a lot of initiatives which were done at the Corona, also Switzerland. But for me, investments in technology is the wrong thing. Technology will change, so you have to adapt then in 3 years. And this is what I'm missing a lot of things is this essence of long life learning. And I think this is important that everybody gets. And this is maybe the story to tell about if you don't do it in this case. So they marked it because it costed them a lot of money. So the pain was there, so they had it to change something. And this is wonderful, but typically, you know that this will happen, but maybe we have the tendency as humans always to wait until it happens, and then we think about what can be done. And now we're facing, and this is for me the big challenge, there's something which was already there before, where people thought about this over hundreds of years, think about statisticians of it, and they were not good in marketing, they're not good in comedy and storytelling. Then AI comes, ChatGPT, they're too fast, too slow, they don't have the communication channels to the public. And this is a little bit the thing. So I'm criticizing no one because there was a time, and you also know the history of statistics, there were not many nerds. When I studied at EPFL, I did maths, there were not so many nerds who were able to take data and make graphics. These were the guys at the maths department who did the statistics course. And now it has become a community. So everybody can do this, but they never learned how to do it. They never learned how to create, because we have the lack in education. Mm-hmm. I'm not criticizing educator again, because they know it will happen. And now we are at a pay where everybody needs to use this stuff. They're daily confronted with generative AI tools. They have to use technology. They don't have driving licenses. I know you like the word driving licenses, also with that. So they're using these tools without a driving license. And this is the problem we have now, and this is the pain which is on the table.
I wouldn't mind, I want to add something to it. Every once in a while, I actually go back into the classroom so that I can stay current when I'm teaching my adult learners. And so I happen to take a 1 day a week job teaching kindergarten. And when I was in the schools 1 day a week teaching kindergarten, the iPads in the classroom were not used, and nobody wanted them to use it, and they said, don't let the kids use that. That's just for if they get a reward. If they're all finished, they can go use the iPad. Well, I disagreed because I teach about teaching with technology. So on the day that I was there, all of my kindergarten students learned to use those iPads, and they learned it for building things and making decisions about what they were building, and they also became part of a math activity that was approved by the board. And then the pandemic came along and we were all sent home. And all of my kindergarten students now knew how to go on their iPads and get onto that math activity that I'd taught them about, and I knew how their patterning activities were going because I could see what they were doing. So I was very grateful for that, but I don't think the principal ever knew that that happened, or that the teachers were then convinced later on to start introducing technology at an early age. But one other observation I want to make is I teach a course on blended learning at the same time as I teach a course on AI in education. And I use discussions every week. And in my blended learning course, people are discussing right away. By week 2, lots of discussion, lots of things happening. In my AI in education course, no, it doesn't usually start till week 5 or 6, and I track those statistics through the learning management system, and it's every time I teach it. Most of the students don't have the confidence that they understand what AI is or that they can talk about it with other people. So I think that the education system should be challenged to start having discussions right from an early age, but I feel passionate about that.
Yeah, definitely. There need to be discussions, but I think like your question really is very relevant. Where is the entrance point of something like data literacy, and what we need to accomplish when it comes to standardization? Because I can definitely tell you, I have a daughter in a school in Berlin, and when it comes to computer science classes, they really started in the 7th grade how to work with an Excel sheet. Yeah, I knew it from my niece in South Germany. They were doing like basic coding in JavaScript, I guess, at the same age, more or less. Yeah, because like obviously like the foundational competencies you need, they were there in the federal state of Baden-Württemberg, and they aren't there in Berlin. And the question is why, yeah? And there again, we are in the problem that the system is not standardized and the same. So we always have to pick up the use cases and see how we can interconnect. Yeah, I mean, when you have a lack of mathematical skills, which we see more and more in German schools, and even in the southern state, we see in the recent PISA study that we weren't performing very well. So we have to look in this and see what basic competencies we need, that we can talk about something like data literacy education or AI literacy education. And the really problem is, and the tension field is, that we can't wait, or we can't just say, just work first on the math skills and then talk about data literacy skills or AI skills in 2 or 3 years. It has to go at the same time. And that's the challenge, I think.
Do you want to end?
I could try and quickly say one more thing. I don't know if anyone here is from the UK. I don't think anyone is. Has anyone heard about a post office scandal in the UK? I don't know how internationally that's travelled. For me, this is a really good example of why, perhaps to your point, Katarina, about how do we get people to value the skills kind of over the technology, is that we need to have this mindset that you talk about of not believing the technology is as great as we think it is to start off with, and so it becomes more about the power of humans to deploy and to decode and to learn how to use data. And so I think it's a fundamental mind shift. So what happens in the UK was, for over 20 years, a Fujitsu payment system. It's not an AI system, it's just a payment system in local post offices, had been showing that postmasters had been defrauding the system. They'd been stealing money. And any tiny, minuscule amount of common sense would have told anybody that the system was faulty, but nobody believed it. And Fujitsu you know, kind of didn't want that getting out. The post office, the government is owned, you know, by the post owned by the government. Nobody allowed any scrutiny, and people were sacked for saying, maybe it's the system. No, it's not the system. Obviously, it was the system. People suicided. They lost their lives, they lost their families, they lost their homes, they lost their reputation. It has had a massive national impact, and it only came to the fore via TV drama. So I've been talking about this for years because it's, you know, this is what happens when, you know, techno-determinism, techno-solutionism, this kind of belief in the kind of power of technology is not challenged. But it only now in Parliament they're starting to pardon the postmasters faster and giving them proper compensation because of a TV drama. So I also think, we were talking earlier, Johannes, about the power of storytelling, and Leslie, how your story about the car accident that you had, and I think it's about engaging, you know, that mindset of like humans versus this utopian idea of infallible technology and the skills that we can learn.
So many thanks. Johannes is standing behind and wants us to end this fantastic discussion, even though I think we could talk another hour about algocracy and sustainability and all these other very important things connected more or less to AI literacy. Thanks to everyone. Thanks also to you as the audience for your fantastic contributions and your willingness to interact with us. I hope you enjoyed the session. I did. And now I will hand over to Johannes for the final words. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Maybe we give the panel and all the speakers applause. And we will just do a short checkout. I will not now summarize my perspective. I think the speakers did great, but I just want to invite you also in the theme of the day of interaction to just go again on Particify, and there you'll find in the question series the question, what was your most important insight today? And maybe if you want to share it, you can type it in there and we can bring it up. So we bring the whole session basically together. You can also quickly rate how you experience the session, and if you have any improvements, we might want to do this next year again. Let us know also in this question series. So I just give you a short amount of time and then I will close. And I just leave that here, no comments, and you can just see if you want to add your things, your perspectives, and take that into the discussions in the lunch break. I thank you all for your participation. I think it's always more fun if it's interactive and people engage. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for all the speakers and for, Katharina to organize it. It was quite fun, and hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day. And one last mention, there is also one poster, I think Leslie mentioned it, on generative AI literacy. You will find that somewhere in the poster slots. So if you're interested, you can check that out. Thanks a lot and enjoy the rest and the lunch break.